Welcome to Talking Technology with NCBI Labs, where we believe that technology is the single greatest enabler for people with sight loss and all disabilities. If you are interested in the latest technology news, products, and innovations, then you've come to the right place.
Hello and welcome to Talking Technology from NCBI Labs. It is episode number 33. We are 1/3 of the way to 100. I don't know what happens at 100. Maybe we've like a massive party, or maybe they fire me. I don't know what happens at that point. We're 1/3 of the way there anyway. So welcome in. Hope you're having a good Tuesday. Hope you're enjoying the weather. It's been very warm over the last few days. So hope you're enjoying it. And let's get on with a packed show today. We've got an absolutely packed show. We're going to be revisiting our iOS to Android discussion from a few weeks ago. We'll be checking in with Kyran and Mairead later on in the show to see how they got on. Have they made the jump over to Android full time, or are they, after going back screaming and crying back to their iPhones, back to iMessage and FaceTime and AirPods? We'll check in with them later on in the show to see what's been going on. We'll also be checking in with IA Labs. It has been more than a year since IA Labs was officially launched, and they recently launched a really cool report in Northern Ireland exploring accessibility of websites in Northern Ireland. So we'll be taking a look at that with Kyran later on in the show, and we'll be exploring what's going on. And of course, we have to talk about the elephant in the room, which is WWDC, which was Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference that took place last week, and they announced so many cool things, including a virtual reality, or should I say, spatial computing headset. We'll be joined by Dave Nason to tell us all about that in just a few minutes. But before all that, just a reminder that if you want to get in touch during the show, you can, as always, email labs@ncbi.ie, or you can use the Q&A panel in Microsoft Teams if you're joining us live. And maybe you're listening to us later, perhaps on our YouTube channel. So if you do have a comment, be sure to leave it down below in the comments section too, because we will see it. And anyway, you want to interact with Talking Technology, we really do appreciate it. So let's get this show on the road, shall we? Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference took place last Monday, and they made all sorts of really cool announcements for all of their operating systems, as well as the big one, the Vision Pro headset. It had been rumored for ages, but we now know a lot more about it. And here to talk about that and everything from WWDC last week, we are joined by the Applevis man himself, Mr. David Nason. Hello again. How are you?
Hello, thanks for having me. I'm good.
Brilliant. So, David, I'm assuming you were eagerly watching WWDC. What were your first impressions? What did you think? What excited you?
Yeah, I absolutely was. It was an interesting one. It was a packed agenda. Ran over 2 hours.
Yeah.
They had so much to talk about, and then parts of it were very exciting and very. Obviously, the new stuff you mentioned, the Vision Pro, is kind of a lot to take in and assess.
For sure.
And then the operating systems, there was, the usual updates to iOS and so on, were probably less. It's not a big year on those ones, I would say.
Yeah, well, usually you see that's the main event, but that kind of got overshadowed this time. But I guess let's start with iOS then. We got a few cool announcements. Check-in is a new feature that is going to be able to alert people when you get home safely, or also alert them if for whatever reason you've left an expected route. There is also postcards in the Contacts app, so you'll be able to basically design what people see when they receive your call. There is a new standby mode when you've got the device in portrait. So when it's on its charger, there's a really cool new large print interface that will show there. And there was a number of other updates as well. Live speech, so live transcription of voicemail, all sorts of cool stuff. Dave, what stood out to you? What kind of features are you looking forward to, or is there anything that's exciting you about iOS this year?
Not too bothered with the postcards and even the standby. I think is probably fine, but maybe I wonder, is it more useful? But it's kind of on the nightstand if you can see well enough to actually see it. As a voiceover user, I don't know if that would be useful, but
that's fair.
We'll see. The live transcription, I think, is a really cool feature. I'm curious to see will we get it in Ireland, because to my knowledge anyway, I certainly don't have visual voicemail now, whereas in other countries you can read your transcripts of your voicemails without having to actually call the voicemail number. We don't have that, so I don't know, does that mean we won't get the live transcription as well? I hope we do get it, because I can definitely see some use in that.
Yeah.
And what was the other one on iOS? I suppose things like improvements to the keyboard. I'm interested in the on-screen keyboard, which was mentioned.
That's interesting.
They're talking about kind of improving the autocorrect and having what they call inline kind of improvements and things like that, and where it can maybe finish sentences for you, that kind of thing.
And you'll be able to curse better, David.
Yes, no more ducking, as they say.
No, we'll be able to curse properly like adults. Apple is letting us be adults. I love it. So yeah, you're interested in the keyboard stuff. A kind of a fair few updates there, updating the autocorrect stuff, as you say. But
check-in, sorry, I think is really cool as well. The thing you mentioned, because again, I think it's like I do that all the time, if I'm out with friends, we kind of say, oh, text when you get home, or, let us know you get home safe, kind of thing. So does it diminish the use of Find My? Do you think this will result in people being less, open to using Find My? Because the way I've always done it, with my family and then with me, is we just share our location, constantly through Find My. Do you think this will make that less common? Possibly. I know I've never used Find My, but I could see myself using this. It's almost like Find My Lite, isn't it? So it's like, I want to use Find My. It's almost like using that just for this one occasion, because we're out together and we want to make sure we all got home. Whereas Find My is a bit more all the time sort of thing. So maybe, it depends on your usage, because I wouldn't need Find My fully, or I've never got into using it, but I could see myself using this.
Sure, that's interesting. On the Mac, you're a Mac user, are you, or do you use the Mac much?
I do have a Mac. Yeah. I don't, I work on Windows, but I have a Mac at home.
Will you be adding loads of widgets to your Mac desktop, do you think?
Maybe things like weather and reminders could be handy, I would think. And I think widgets across the board have got improvements, so they're going to be interactive now. So at the moment, even on iOS, if you select something on a widget, it opens up the app. You know what I mean? You can't just have a play pause button, or if you've got a reminders widget, you can't just check the reminder off. It actually opens the app as soon as you select it. Whereas now you'll be able to actually just interact with those widgets without it opening the full app, which I think is a big step forward on all the platforms. And being able to, and I think you can now share your widgets from your phone over to your Mac as well, so it doesn't have to be
really cool.
A separate set of them. So I think that is quite useful, definitely.
I'm really excited to see the interactive home widget. I've tried workarounds for this, for so long, using third-party apps, but it looks like we're finally getting a dedicated home widget that will allow us to actually control things like lights and stuff like that without having to open apps, which will be pretty cool.
Yeah, if you're invested in the Apple kind of home.
Do you know what? It's one of these things. I went down that road. It's been the most stable solution. We went big with the Philips Hue, and it's a great system. But being able to interact with it on the home screen is a big plus.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm more in the all I have at the moment is a kind of a Hive heating system, which is kind of connected more to my Alexa or to its own app. But so I haven't really explored the home thing with Apple yet, but I definitely see that being useful.
Well, who knows? Maybe you'll be able to adjust your heating from an interactive widget. It's certainly possible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would be a lot easier.
So Apple Watch then, we're getting, I guess, widgets are also coming to Apple Watch. This one didn't really excite me, if I'm honest. I don't know how you felt about it, but like,
Yeah, it's kind of one
I
of
was
those.
I thought watchOS was underwhelming this year.
It's kind of like I think there was a lot of talk leading up that they were going to kind of overhaul the user interface, and then maybe it wasn't as much of an overhaul as people thought or what it was, but it's kind of now, yeah, if you swipe up, and I assume for us with VoiceOver, it'll be swipe up with 2 fingers on the home screen, it'll get you into kind of widgets. And I think you can have it intelligently kind of try and figure out which widget it thinks you want now, or you can maybe reorder them yourself. But like, we already have the complications, and I don't know. It depends how you use your watch, I guess. I don't know about you, Dave, but I don't use a lot of apps on my watch. I tend to just, I have the weather and the sunset time and sunrise time, and I have my steps, and they're all just there on my little watch face anyway.
Yeah, for me, it's just time and notifications. And I mean, for that reason, I don't necessarily see the use case for this. I'll be interested to see what they do with the control center. Because I'd use the control center a lot now.
That's still there, but the side button now will, instead of opening recently opened apps, the side button will open the control center now.
Oh,
not the digital crown, the flat one.
The other side button that nobody knows is there sometimes.
Yeah, that one. That will open the control center now. Apparently.
That's fascinating.
It reminds me a little bit. Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of, in a way, of watchOS 1, funnily enough. The very first one had these they called them glances at that time. And it was kind of like mini versions of the apps, like not the fully loaded apps. Because in those days, I guess they couldn't, a lot of the stuff was coming from the phone. The watch didn't have much capability of its own. But in terms of the user interface they're going for, it actually reminds me like they've kind of gone full circle to an extent.
Yeah, watchOS 10 is just watchOS 1 with a little more flashiness.
Yeah, and actually with the capability to do what it's supposed to.
Well, there you go. That it just shows the difference some good hardware can make.
Yeah.
So then, any kind of other stuff outside of the big one that stood out to you? Was there anything that excited you on the software side?
There's a couple of interesting things. I think the AirPods update, where they seem to have created some sort of new. At the moment, you're going to have noise cancellation, where you have transparency, where kind of pass-through mode. And now they seem to have created a new kind of third, almost hybrid one, which is kind of more
adaptive audio. Yes.
I'm really interested in that, because I would do this. I'd be going, out for a walk or walking down the street, and I'd have my AirPods in, and I'm trying to listen to a podcast. And sometimes if I have transparency mode on, I can't hear the podcast. But then if I have, even though that's the idea of it, is that you can kind of hear the world around you while listening. But I just find the street noise, the car noise and stuff is too loud. But then if I put noise cancellation on, I can hear the podcast, but I feel like, am I being unsafe here? So I'm wondering if this new adaptive mode will kind of give me the happy medium that I'm looking for.
It's an interesting one, because I've never felt, not just for those reasons, but I've never felt comfortable wearing AirPods outside. And it's also one of these things where I'm a bit of an audio freak. So for me, I've always found, like you, that, if you're listening to something with, the kind of noise pass through on and stuff, it's, a transparency mode, that's the word. It's just not as good quality, I found. So I'm really interested to see if this can adequately blend the two, that I'm not totally oblivious to conversation while also being able to enjoy stuff.
Yeah, exactly. We'll wait and see on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So shall we talk about the biggie?
Go for it then, yeah.
Right. The Apple Vision Pro is Apple's new headset. They call it a spatial computer. It's a virtual reality headset, so it's shaped really like a bulky pair of swimming goggles, is how we described it in the newsletter last week. And it's totally standalone. It doesn't look like it needs the iPhone to do a whole lot, at least for now. It has a digital crown on it. It will have voiceover. It's going to use hand gestures to control voiceover. So you will be able to pinch to control things. So there will be gestures like pinch, double pinch, triple pinch, and hold. And it
different
will
fingers, if
also,
you use your index
yeah,
finger versus your ring finger, those kinds of things. It's crazy.
yeah. So your first impressions, Dave, do you think, I guess, first of all, if we look at this from the fundamental point of view, like, do you think there is a place for virtual reality, augmented reality for visually impaired people? And what is that, do you think?
I think there is. I was probably more impressed than I expected to be, I guess. I kind of would have been a bit like, is this going to be any use to us at all? I'm a little more confident, and I think it's great that they've got those accessibility features in, whether it's voiceover or your high contrast or larger font. It's all there from day one.
It's all coming.
You know, which I think is really, really good to see from them. They have been thinking about it, and I think we can see in things like either that they're doing in some of the phones, you know, with things like door detection, or the stuff they've announced this year, point and speak and things like that, that you can use. Uses the LiDAR and the camera on the Pro phones. Some of that kind of stuff will definitely be, you know, part of this as well. So those kind of specific accessibility functions, I think, will be good. And you know, obviously using it with things like Be My Eyes or iWrap. But at the same time, do you want to spend $3,500 on a, you know, on a Be My Eyes machine? Essentially,
well, you see, that's, you know, it's an interesting point, because, you know, there are huge kind of potentials, like you said, Be My Eyes, Ira, Seeing AI, I think, could be a big one, you know, or even it's not available in Ireland, but there's a tool called OCO, which lets you, it's like, it tells you when traffic lights are green and stuff. But I mean, so there's a lot of potential in that way, but as you say, $3,500. Now that's in dollars. It'll probably be more in euros if we're being realistic, because of the way Apple's import and everything seems to work. But do you think that's worth it? Do you think, you know, the prices are going to come down?
It's hard to know, because like people have been saying that about, oh well, price will come down naturally. But I mean, that didn't happen for the iPhone. That didn't happen for the Apple Watch. You know what I mean? The prices didn't come down, but they're obviously cheaper to begin with products, but not cheap all the same. You know.
But none of those had the Pro title either from the offset.
That's exactly where I was going. Yeah, my hope I wouldn't be so convinced that this one will get, and its next generations will get cheaper, but I could see there being an Apple Vision Air, or, you know, whatever they decide to call it.
I like that branding. I like that branding. You should work for Apple. I like the Apple. I'm
sure
Vision
they have it
Air.
Copyrighted already. But
you're probably right.
That quick.
It's
a good suggestion though. Apple Vision Air. I like it.
Yeah, and you know, it's gonna, even the Pro one. I mean, at the moment, it doesn't have an onboard. It sort of has an onboard battery. You carry the battery in your pocket, and it's kind of the size of like 2 iPhones or something like that, and it's wired in, you know what I mean? And that gives you 2 hours of battery. The headset itself, in order to keep it kind of lightweight, even though it's not lightweight, but not make it heavier and bulkier than it is already, doesn't have a battery in it, you know what I mean? So you're wired to this thing, or you can plug into the wall and have, you know, all day then. Whereas you would think in the future they'd want to slim it all down,
you'd hope
have its own battery pack, you know, built in and all that kind of stuff. But it could be a few years before it gets to where it's something that I would buy, you know what I mean? But I mean, especially if they come out with a lighter one, I would think people like Envision and stuff will be looking at that with their Orcam, whatever, what's that one called?
Orcam. Yeah.
The likes of them, I'm sure they're kind of looking at it with raised eyebrows, going, you know, okay. Well,
you'd be thinking so, because I mean, they are, you know, like a point that I made when doing the article for the newsletter is, you know, yes, Apple Vision Pro is extremely expensive, but so are Orcam and the Envision headsets and all these devices too. They're just as pricey in some cases.
They're running something equivalent to iOS, so getting those apps on board wouldn't take a huge amount, you know what I mean? So if Microsoft wanted to do Seeing AI on this thing, I'd imagine it's quite an easy port for them.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing as well. You have all those apps for apps. And then for people with low vision and stuff, I could see being really cool. You could just suddenly have a big what feels like a 60-inch screen right in front of you instead of your 13-inch laptop screens, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think on the low vision side, I could see there definitely being a lot of application for it.
I think, and there's no indication that any of this might ever happen, right? But I've got this bit of a dream with Vision Pro, maybe 5-10 years down the line, right? Where, you know, the way, for example, AirPods can do monitoring of like noise level and stuff like that, right? I've been looking at the Vision Pro, and it has so many sensors for eye tracking. It has optic ID verification, which literally scans your iris. I wonder, like, in 5 or 10 years' time, might this start to have health implications in the same way that Apple Watch has, where it could do, you know, traditional, like, just do some of the tests that might traditionally have to be done in an eye clinic?
Yeah, because it's a good idea. I hadn't thought of it, but yeah, that's things like field of vision tests and things like that.
Yeah, it's you know, or even, you know, monitoring for things of like, you know, nystagmus or whatever the case may be. I don't know. Maybe I'm totally on my own here, but I think that is where this device could really have huge benefit, because that's where the value just skyrockets.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. I think it's very first generation. You know what I mean? I don't think there's going to be many of us going out buying one of these next year when it comes out. But I wouldn't be surprised to see it stick around and actually become something that everyone has if it becomes less bulky and stuff. And like, you know, you wouldn't walk down the street with this now. So even if we're talking about being eyes or iRun or something like that, one of the things I don't like about those using them out and about is I don't want to carry my phone out in front of me.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get mugged for one thing, but I think I'd be mugged if I was wearing a big set of Apple goggles.
Yeah, either that or they'd be scared to approach.
Yeah. I think it's really cool what they've done with the mixed reality, I suppose you might call it, where you mentioned the digital crowns, and you turn it all the way one way, you're in a sort of augmented world where you can see the real world around you if you have usable vision, and then you're seeing things placed within the real world. Or you can go into virtual reality mode, which is a fully immersive, you know, world where there's no kind of sense of the outside world in it. I think that's a really interesting way that they've done that. I don't think any of the other headsets from Meta and the likes have kind of that two-way kind of way of using it, where you can kind of fade yourself in and out of the real world.
Have you tried stuff like the Meta Quest or Steam Index or PlayStation VR or any of those before? And how did you find those? Or no?
I've never tried. If Apple are listening, I'm more than happy to try out this one. But
yeah, and us too. Send us a few in the NCBI, because it's one of these things, you know, I am really excited to try it. I'm with you that it feels like a very first generation product. But I do think there's potential there, and that potential might take time. It might take a while for there to become more, for it to get more sensors and to get a better price point. But there is going to be a time, I think, not where everyone will be using a headset. This will never replace the iPhone in my view, but I do think it has a lot of very valid use cases.
Yeah, and there's the whole social aspect. I don't know if you remember Google Glass back, it must be 10 years ago or more, when they were very obviously, it wasn't like this, it was like a little screen to the side of the glasses, and they were very silly looking as well, apparently, at that time anyway. And people didn't like it, you know what I mean? And the idea that you were walking around and you couldn't see if somebody was taking a photo of you because they weren't even taking a phone out, you know. And there's things like that that kind of social side of it as well, of how we actually use these, and how isolating, even though you can see the real world around you, if you have sight, it's still like, how isolating do you feel with this big headset on you, and that kind of thing. So there's kind of development. I'm thinking the Black Mirror kind of side of things, almost like, will we eventually have little contact lenses in or something? That does all this, but
yeah, I mean, you wouldn't know. It's going to be an interesting journey for sure, but you know, it's one of these things. I think it's just going to have to take its course. We'll be playing in just a minute. We are going to play a video that we produced just summarizing all of the different WWDC announcements. But your final thoughts for now, David, about the Vision Pro. Obviously, we'll get you back in if we ever get one for you to try or something. But you know, your final thoughts for now. Where do you think it will go? Where do you want it to go? And how likely do you think that is?
I think in the short term, I don't think it'll be something that many people will pick up, but I do think they'll go for lighter versions as well and more affordable versions. I think they have to do that. I think if it remains a kind of $3,500 very high spec device that this is going to be, I think it'll be very difficult for them to really claim a big audience for this device. You know what I mean? But I do think they will do that, and I think it'll become something people use a lot. I agree with you. I'm not so sure it'll become something that actually replaces the iPhone, because I just don't think people want to be walking around with headsets, really.
Yeah,
ultimately.
Yeah.
And you need a break. They talk to us all the time about, on your phone, it can tell you how much time you spent on your phone this week, and too much screen time. So do you really want to have screens attached to you 24/7? I don't think you do. So I don't think it'll replace anything, but I do think there's circumstances I can see it working, meetings and things like that, FaceTime calls or whatever, Zoom calls and things like that, where people might want to use it as well. So
it's a really interesting point, because we saw the demo where you can wear this and there's no need to position a camera for FaceTime or anything, because you're just an avatar effectively. Yeah,
and then is that what we want? Because if you do a FaceTime call, maybe you want to see the actual person and not an avatar of them. Like, I don't know. There's a whole lot of things for us to work out, I think, as to what we actually like. And I think it reminds me a little bit of the Apple Watch when it came out, where Apple kind of gave us, it can do this, and it was a bit overwhelming. We didn't quite know what we were going to use it for, and it took them a few years to really find their rhythm with the Apple Watch and focus in on the things that it's good for, like the health and fitness stuff and that kind of thing, that they really have a more focused message on. And I think it'd probably be 2 or 3 or 4 years before maybe we really know exactly what these headsets are actually going to be good for and what we want to use them for, and for Apple themselves to know where they want to focus on.
What would you be willing to pay?
It's really hard to answer that question. I'd prefer it was closer to between 1,000 and 2,000 sort of thing. I'd prefer it was cheaper again, obviously, but I can't imagine myself going to the price it is now.
Okay, fair enough. David, thank you so much for joining us on Talking Technology. As always, I know you took some time out of work as well today, so thank you so much for doing that and joining us. So what we'll do now is we covered a lot of the stuff there, but we are going to play this little quick video that demos, or doesn't demo really, it kind of tells you all about the new features that are coming to your devices and tells you a little bit about Vision Pro. Apple's Worldwide Developers Conference, or WWDC, took place in Apple Park yesterday. The event is usually used to make software announcements and sometimes hardware announcements. We got all that and more yesterday, so in this video, let's take a look at some of the cool things that Apple announced. Here's what's coming in 2023 and beyond. We started the event with hardware announcements for the Mac, starting with the MacBook Air. Apple announced the MacBook Air 15-inch, which is an upgrade from the 13-inch MacBook Air which existed previously. The new 15-inch MacBook Air has many of the same features as the 13-inch counterpart, but it has a bigger screen which might be attractive to some with vision impairments. They also announced the Mac Studio and Mac Pro, both now getting M2 Ultra chips. This is Apple's most powerful chip ever. That's pretty cool. All these new Macs from Apple will be available from next week, so we won't have long to wait before we get an idea of their true potential. Next, it was on to iOS 17. When you call someone in iOS 17, you'll be able to customize the screen that they see when they receive your call. This could be a huge feature for those with sight loss, because it'll make the screens much more unique. You'll also be able to see a live transcript as people leave you voicemail. Check-in notifications will tell a family member or friend that you've arrived at your location safely, And Name Drop will also be coming to iOS 17, allowing you to share your phone number by simply tapping your phone off another person's phone or Apple Watch. There's a new journaling app to store your memories and precious moments. And in a really cool feature for those with sight loss, when you turn your locked phone sideways, you'll get a new large print interface with widgets such as the time, the calendar, and whatever developers can come up with. This could be a game changer for those who have low vision. After the excitement of the iPhone, it was time to move on to macOS. Now, the exciting thing about macOS at WWDC isn't even the new features, it's the name. And this year's name is macOS Sonoma. Sonoma isn't just a cool name though, it's also got lots of great new features. You can add widgets to your desktop for the first time, providing vital information front and center on your screen. The widgets hide away beautifully when you open apps. The Mac is also getting a new gamer mode. This gives the game you're playing the full power of the Mac's computation, and it will also reduce latency for AirPods and game controllers. Speaking of AirPods, they're getting a new adaptive audio feature. After the Mac and AirPods news, it was on to the Apple Watch, which is getting widgets. And a really cool new feature in the Mindfulness app to let you track your daily mood. This daily mood tracking is also coming to the Health app on the iPhone, so if you don't have an Apple Watch, you'll still be able to track this valuable mental health metric. Of course, all this information will be logged securely on the Health app on iPhone. After talking about mental health, it was time to talk about vision health. Myopia, or nearsightedness, is one of the most common causes of vision impairment, and Apple are introducing 2 new features to try and reduce it. Daylight tracking uses the ambient sensor in the Apple Watch to make sure that your child is getting enough daylight each day. And near screen detection will provide a notification if you're too close to a screen. That was all from Apple's existing platforms.
But we do have one more thing.
That one more thing was Apple's Vision Pro headset. The Vision Pro headset is designed like swimming goggles, with screens and lenses on the inside. When you're wearing the Vision Pro, what you're effectively seeing is the real world, but with a virtual overlay on top of it. So when you put it on, you'll first see your home screen. The home screen will be in the real world, but it will have your app icons overlaid on top. It'll have all the apps that you're used to, such as Safari, Keynote, Photos, and Apple TV+. So you can watch shows on massive screens, for example. It's unclear how developers will use this technology, but it's going to allow a lot of creativity because you can augment the world in any way, shape, or form. We'll need to wait and see if apps like Seeing AI or Be My Eyes come to the Vision Pro, but it was an exciting announcement to end this year's WWDC. If you like event recaps like this from a more accessible perspective, subscribe to the NCBI Labs YouTube channel. Oh man, I want to try the Vision Pro so bad. It really is quite a cool product, and yeah, does kind of feel like a first generation, as Dave Nason said there, but yeah, I still want to try it really bad. But anyway, who knows? Maybe in a year or two, we'll be able to play with it and give some real opinions on it from having played with it. Now, someone who I'm sure will have many thoughts on the Vision Pro as well, but we'll come to that later, is Kyran O'Mahony. He is the CTO here at NCBI and CEO of IA Labs. And he is here to tell us about how he got on with his transition to Android. We forced Kyran into a bit of a challenge to play around with Android for a while, but has he stuck with it or has he gone crawling back to iPhone? Kyran, how are you?
I'm very good, David. How are you doing today?
Very good, thank you. So, Kyran, let's start, I guess, with Android. For those who didn't hear our previous episodes, do you want to tell us a little bit about where this came from and just your initial experiences?
So I'm going to blame the very wonderful Daniel Dunn for all of this entire situation. He's been advocating for Android for many years now, and eventually I said I'm going to have to actually listen to him and give it a try. So as I said on the previous shows, I've been an iPhone user from the 3GS, and I've seen specifically the accessibility features evolve and be enhanced over many years. And I remember, I can literally remember when they first brought in dynamic font on iPhone. I can't remember which iPhone operating system version it was, but I remember thinking, oh my God, this is the game changer. And then at the time you had to have a specific iPhone to do it. It was only available on the latest iPhone, whereas now it's on all of them. So and then, as they started enhancing accessibility features like zoom and magnifier and numerous other pan disability kind of accessibility features, I grew more and more more and more attached to my iPhone. I tell the story quite often, but I because I want people to really realize how much technology is this huge enabler, and my iPhone for me has been a huge enabler for me living with sight loss. And well, actually I never had it, so I didn't actually lose it. But I was born with a condition called congenital nystagmus. Congenital obviously being not born with it, but it's been as I've grown older, specifically, using, my iPhone every day, I don't ever leave the house without it. That's how reliant I am with it. It's a mobility tool for me. It's a magnification tool. And as I said on the first show, I quite literally every single day use it to read bedtime stories to my little girl, because obviously, it's a darkened room. I need to make the text really big. It has really good way to control the light for it. So it's an integral part of what I do almost every day. So, but yet there's other voices out there. Daniel and Sean and the broader guys on the NCBI Labs team have been advocating quite heavily for how Android has come along. So we needed to get a device in iLabs, and I know we're talking about iLabs a little bit more, just to do some additional Android testing. So I said, hey, there's a good opportunity here for me to see where Android is, and see how the accessibility features have progressed, and what it's like to use an Android phone. And I know it's been done before in another there's been plenty of YouTube videos out there about people switching from one to the other. But I thought, our perspective is, and commonality around sight loss would be an interesting approach to take to review it. So and also I wanted to make sure we were using a device that no one could say, well, if you only got the slightly better device or the slightly better Android phone, that one would have X features. So the one that I've been looking at is the Pixel Pro 7. I think the 7 is the latest one. I'm open to correction on that. Sorry, I'm almost certain it's the 7. So it is a flagship Android phone. It's also the larger screen model. I have limited vision. I don't typically use voiceover or screen readers, but I'm actually setting myself a little personal goal to learn them more as of late. I think they're incredibly powerful tool to be familiar with. And then how could I set it up, and then how could I use it day to day? What would it be like living with that as my key accessibility tool?
The Android life, living that Android life, really.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you were initially impressed, though.
So I have to say, and all joking aside, right? Because and we do a lot of joking here in the NCBI Labs team around the technology, because that's what we're passionate about. And I think you have to have some fun with technology. But all joking aside, the experience was far better than I thought it was going to be. And there is, I think Apple came to the table in their product design quite a bit sooner than Android. They definitely were ahead. I think the differences now are marginal. And I think in some aspects, my ultimate conclusion here is in some aspects, Android is better than iPhone for some accessibility features. And some of them are hardware related. And some of them are software related. So I can give you guys a summary of my thoughts on the accessibility features.
Do you want to take us through that? Just tell us kind of what you were using and how you found it better, or things that you didn't find better.
So 100% the Pixel Pro's camera is amazing if you're like me and you can't see things at a distance. It is just better and I have the iPhone, the latest iPhone Pro Max, right? So there is an equivalence here. So in terms of long distance, as a long distance magnifier or molecular telescope, it is just better. The AI and the sharpening, it's just ahead. Now the downside is that there's no specific tool as slick as the inbuilt magnifier tool on iPhone. So, there's a bit of a, do you want the handiness of just having an icon on your phone that's dedicated for magnification, or do you want slightly better image quality but not as good user experience? And I think there's products out there that are coming online, and I know people listening will probably be saying, well, there's this app and there's that app. What I really like about the iPhone piece as a user experience with sight loss is that it's just a little bit more seamless. And what I find is that at the point where there's 3 buses coming, I'm panicking because I can't quite see the bus. I'm late because my wife needs me home to be with the kids. It's just quicker. The iPhone I can get it out of my pocket. I can get the magnification up. And I found I did struggle a little bit. Whereas if I have a little bit more time, the Android is just better. Now, in saying that, at the last show, Daniel recommended a tool to me, which I've forgotten the name of off the top of my head, which was for reading. I don't know, Daniel, if you're online there in the background, which was a Google tool that we downloaded on our second show for doing increased magnification. For reading pages of text.
Was that Google Lookout?
Google Lookout.
Lookout. That is brilliant. Like, that is just so good compared to
better than seeing AI.
I'm not not from a seeing AI point of view. It's more for reading text on. So let's say if you're reading the journal.ie, the website.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it reads it turns text on a screen into a more readable fashion. That's how you describe it, Daniel. I would say, yeah. It's
sorry. So it's for what's on your screen. That was the reader mode.
Reader mode, yeah.
Google Reader mode, yeah.
I love that. 100%. It's great.
Brilliant.
And I know when we were chatting about it originally, you were saying, oh, it doesn't work for everything. I really haven't found a case where it doesn't work flawlessly. And I've noticed a lot because I would use the reader mode on iPhone, for web pages quite a bit, and that's quite buggy. You're missing quite a lot of content. I find when I'm using that. So I find if I need to read or I want to browse the internet, I reach for the Android phone. Because I still have the iPhone for work because it's where all NCBI work related things are. So there's kind of pros and cons. The other side of things is, and I'm surprised I'm saying this, but the UI elements of the phone with the ability to magnify iconography and the ability to magnify text, both of those together as a combined sense is better on Android.
Okay.
It's just better. So if I mean purely to do something, let me just describe what I'm looking at now at the moment. So I'm looking at the home screen of my iPhone, and I'm looking at the home screen of the Pixel, and the Pixel is easier to read, 100%. Although I do think the Pixel screen is not quite as good, but in terms of the accessibility settings and my ability to have larger icons with, I can orientate my vision a little bit better because the icons are bigger. And then I can use the text is larger. Now, obviously, let's say for certain things like YouTube, I'm only seeing YOUTU, and then I get ... because the text is too big. So there's still refinements that the interface needs, but I can see the icon clearly, and I know from context that YOUTU is enough for me to understand that that's the YouTube icon. And then obviously touch targets are slightly better. So in that sense, 100%. There is some, like, I mean, there's some realities though, and I think this is a good conversation to have, because my thinking as we got, and I was thinking, how do I express for the final piece of this series, because it's been a 3-part series. So part 1, looking at how it's set up, part 2, giving you guys some initial feedback on how I use the devices. But part 3 for me is all about the ecosystem and what your family and friends are using. And the more and more I thought about it, the questions that were deciders for me, and I love this, right? The questions that really were deciders for me weren't accessibility related.
Doesn't that feel great though?
Yeah, and once that thought struck me, I was like, I'm choosing which device I prefer from just using and having fun, and like, they're expensive toys at the end of the day. Yeah. I'm not choosing which is better from an accessibility point of view, and I very much thought, like, when I went into this little review originally, I very much thought I would come to the end and go, iPhone has just better accessibility, and that's the end of it. Now, I think about it more and more. Like, I do find, just in general, non-accessibility related pieces, I find the Android generally quite okay to use. I mean, the UI is on. I mean, there's some bits that are different. There's some bits that are better. I love the home screen, how you can manipulate where icons sit. It's just fun playing with it. You know what I mean? It's just, I do think iPhone is a little bit behind, and I was kind of sorry to see that in the latest. I mean, the widgets on iPhone are I don't know how what you guys think about them, but I find the widgets on iPhone kind of pointless.
Well, we only spoke with David there about how they're getting
sorry, David,
interactive.
if I just contradicted you, by the way.
No, that's okay. He was saying that we're getting interactive widgets now. So
in the new iOS. Oh, yes. Cool. Okay, yeah, amazing. Because up until this point, I'd like beyond clock. And one of the things I noticed with the iPhone widgets is they've reduced the font size in some of them compared to, like, for example, used to see news as a notification center in an iPhone, but now in the new news widget, the font size is so small I can't use it anymore. So there's been little design decisions around that on the widgets on iPhone that I wouldn't be. So maybe that's just my use case. I don't use them.
No, you're not wrong. Widgets on iPhone are terrible. Like, there's no outside of like clock and WordPress stats, I've never had a use for it. Like,
yeah. And every time someone likes our YouTube channel, we get an alert to David's phone. So make David happy out there, like and subscribe.
That is not true, but yeah.
But then generally, I mean, as I said, the camera on the AI camera on the Pixel Pro I think it's called the Magic Eraser. It's so fun to play with. When you take a picture and you see, there's taking a picture of my kids, and there's someone else, a kid in the background, and you go, actually, I'll just erase them from the photo. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's like, it's so much fun. And then on the ecosystem side of things, one point to make. I've always heard for years and years and years as an Android user, as an iPhone user. I'm already calling myself an Android user. Oh my God. For years and years as an iPhone user, that Android battery was terrible, and it's fine. There's zero. I'm having very.
You're getting all day, like.
No problem at all, and I've even brought this phone on a long haul flight for like 11 hours and lasted the entire way. Had enough to get an Uber when I got off the plane, so it was really. No issues whatsoever, and general day-to-day things. Find My Android phone or whatever the branding is just doesn't work. It took about 6 weeks for it to start working, and I have no idea why it started working. It just all of a sudden started to work. Whereas I use Find My Keys, or Find My what's it called on the Apple devices? It's called
Find
My, isn't it? Find My, yeah. I use that. I must be an extremely, forgetful person, but at least once or twice a day I've forgotten my keys or my wallet or something. So that's something that I did miss any time I had, and not being able to then find my Android phone when I lost it because it just didn't work was a bit of a revelation. So where is it at the moment? And I think, sorry, David, not to jump into your question.
No, go for it.
But and I've thought really long and hard about which one I'm going to settle with, right? So the new Apple device, the Vision Pro.
Yeah, let's talk about it. Go on.
Oh my God. My reaction to that with infinitely sized screen.
Okay,
Like,
so you're into it?
Yeah, oh my God, yes. There is no doubt about it. I haven't been this excited about an Apple product since the iPad. And I literally got an iPad shipped
you're really into it.
Shipped from the States when it came out. I used some dodgy forwarding company and really risked a lot of money to get it over. I was one of the first people, I think, in Ireland to have an iPad. And then, so there's a couple of things about Vision Pro that I think are going to be game changer. The first thing is, like, so with my eye condition is nystagmus, so my eyes jitter. And they're constantly moving and I can't control them. So the fact that you can control it without using eye tracking I was so relieved. And I think there's probably numerous people with various eye conditions that would have impacted in, but obviously Apple have thought of that, so that's incredible. And even the fact that they've really thought hard about building accessibility features into Vision Pro and Reality OS is commendable. It really, really is. But the stuff that blew me away, so on one of the Pure videos they released, and I'm not sure if David, if you used it in your recap, but there's a scene of a gentleman who's standing at a desk and he has 3 screens surrounding him in virtual space, and one is basically his messages, one is like just he's browsing the internet, but each of those are probably equivalent to, an 85-inch TV, just in front of you. And I remember watching it and shouting. I watched it here in the office one late one evening, and I shouted at Colin Kenny, who's our information system manager, going, "Take my money!" So that to me, just having that ability to make things so big and that immersive experience. Now, I'm really curious, and I haven't really used VR or AR before, and I think we've gotten some devices coming in here to NCBI Labs to do some testing on. So I'm sure David, JP, and the team will update you all on it later. But I'm curious to see how perspective works. Because they still are only 4K screens. So, how does if the resolution work for someone with sight loss as you expand them? I'm really curious to see how that is, and also that how much you can tweak the operating system to be in line with various types of conditions, like color invert and or focus or bold, or for dyslexia and things like that. So there's a lot of testing I think we need to do.
A lot of those we can there is a list of accessibility features out there, so a lot of those features that you did mention are coming there. Yeah,
and I think that it's worthwhile testing them, and we will obviously do that on the team. Is probably more where I was thinking there. But for me, I mean, that's a big thing, staying in that, and that's what it's kind of come down to me on is daily driver. What's your daily driver phone, and which is the one you reach for more often. It's like when I finally put my SIM card back in my phone, do you know what I really missed? Like some really silly things. I missed the MagSafe charger I have beside my bed.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah, because I didn't think it was a visual issue, but it is, because I don't have to orientate it. I can do it off field because the magnet kicks in and locks the phone to the charger. So I never have to put a cable in the bottom. Now I do know that the Pixel has wireless charging. I'm not saying it doesn't, but the benefit of MagSafe,
it is getting a magnet. The new Qi standard does have that MagSafe standard is actually open source now, so it is being integrated into the Qi standard.
Well, that's great. That's great news, because I definitely found myself. It wasn't something I realized I'd missed, but when I put the SIM card back in, I realized that was annoying me, and that small little thing. And we had a service user in a little while ago, and he was saying that he struggled with putting the cable into the bottom of his iPhone, and in fact he'd actually damaged the bottom of the cable because he couldn't see it well enough. So we had recommended just a normal Qi charger, and he hated it because he wouldn't be able to tell if the light had activated or if it was charging. And then when we provided him with the MagSafe one, he loved it because it's not a visual thing; it's a touch. It's a different sense. So I did.
You can feel it, yeah.
I did really miss that. I did try, like we talked about before. I did try the Sony Air, but things. They're just not as good as AirPods. AirPods are probably, in my view, the best wireless earbud out there.
Yeah.
I know not from sound quality, and I do cave on that, but everything else is just so convenient. That's really there. And then the final one, which was a really big one for me, is that almost everyone I know in my circle of friends, my circle of family, is an iPhone user. So, you know, all the little kind of ecosystem tweaks, you find yourself kind of missing them. As you deal with people. And I definitely noticed as I started to, you know, put the SIM card back in, I was like, oh, now I can do this, or you know, I can use AirDrop, or you know, and I use a Mac for work here in NCBI. So the other time I would, you know, AirDrop files back and forth just if I needed to.
Sure. Yeah.
So little things like that, certainly, you know, again, none of it was accessibility decision. It was just like, is this the right phone for me? So I'm also going to throw a little bit of spanner in the works, if you don't mind, David, just to finish
Go
up.
for it.
I'm going to keep both phones. I don't want to give the Android back.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Fair enough.
So,
Kyran, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Throughout your usage in trialing the Android phone, did you give Google Assistant much of a spin at all?
No, actually, I didn't. And now that you said that, I'm like, damn it, I should have tried that more. I have a love-hate relationship with voice assistants.
Okay.
And no, let me explain why. Because being like you all on this call here, I love smart tech. Oh my God! If you knew the stupid amount of money that I've saved over the year and squandered on various Hue accessories and, you know, Philips Hue lighting.
Oh, he's in that world.
And I have, David, you have no idea. I have. It's gotten so bad that my wife has cut off. I'm not allowed to buy any more lights because
I'm in the same with the mother. I'm not allowed to get anything now unless it's Nest smoke alarms.
So
that's the only one they love.
We literally have 3 Hue hubs in our house because I maxed out the amount of lights you can put in a hub. So
how do you even do that? Wow.
Oh, it's possible, trust me. See, between like ceiling lights and like, so what I did, I was buying like one bulb every, you know, month, every other month, and over the course of a couple of years, I was like, wait a minute.
I get it.
Yeah, and then I also have Sonos. I'm a huge Sonos person, and like a lot of people with Silos, I have a bit of a obsession with audio, and poor JP. Anytime there's bad audio on the NCBI Labs technology show, JP gets a little message going, what happened? so
That's okay. It's always constructive, Kyran.
Yes, it is. Yes, thank you, JP. And so all of that kind of integration on smart home has been a huge part of mine. But why I kind of love and hate the voice assistant piece is that Siri has annoyed me so much over the years that it just didn't occur to me to use Google Assistant because so let's say, I'll give you an example. I have a routine set up on Home at Home, if that makes sense, on the Home app at home. And it's a very simple routine. And it turns on my daughter's nightlight. Okay. So, you know, because obviously, as any parent knows, is that, and I'm sure JP and Daniel, I'm sorry, David, I'm not sure if you have any kids, but
no, not yet.
But will attest to getting your kids to bed is you want to do it as efficiently and quickly as possible so adult time can begin, which is like usually watching Netflix or having a glass of wine or whatever, right? So I had a little routine set up on it that basically says, hey, S word, nightlight, okay? And that activates my daughter's nightlight in her room, and then she gets cozy in bed and she goes to sleep. I have to, on average, say that 5 different times, which my little girl thinks is hilarious.
Yeah.
She thinks this is the funniest thing ever. And I've deleted all other shortcuts that even have N in them. I've deleted the good night routine that's on Apple devices. I've deleted everything. And almost every night it gets it wrong. So quite literally, the only thing I use that S word for is set a timer. That's it. So if David, David, Daniel, or JP, if you've any, I would love to hear some more kind of use cases given my absolute obsession with smart tech for Google Assistant. I'd love to know a bit more.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. We're firmly now on we're firmly on the Alexa side, but we've I treated myself to a HomePod Mini there last Christmas, and I've got to be honest, it's the one I remember you saying before, Kyran, that the Apple Watch was kind of that one Apple product that just didn't do it for you, and for me, the HomePod is that. Alexa is just plain better. I would recommend using flick buttons though to solve your problem with the nightlight. But outside of that,
buttons.
I mean,
Amazon, here I come.
yeah, no, really good, pricey yokes, but amazing bits of kit.
FLIC?
FLIK, I think. Well, I'll double check that one for you, and we'll follow up after. But yeah, I've just never found Siri to be quite as good. I do use it for texting and stuff now, but it's better at that. But no, it's not for like smart home and stuff.
I'd find Google Assistant for texting a lot sharper.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, it tends not to misspell as much. Like, there's none of them immune to picking you up wrong, but having texted from hands-free texting, obviously through voice, through the Siri or through the Google Assistant, I find the accuracy is better on the Google.
And do you have much? One of the things I think actually, what it would say as well, is we have electric blinds in a couple of rooms. And at the remote control is broken at the moment, so but it's integrated with Siri. Do you find integration's a bit better on Google Assistant for smart devices? Like, I can find Home app is quite restrictive in what it will actually let you do.
I suppose I haven't road tested too much. All I have here is a couple of smart sockets, and I can just I can change the names in them very easy. If I'm gonna take it out of one room, put it in another, it's very simple. And asking it to switch it on and off, like, that's as much as I do, and it does it perfect. Yeah, no problems. So I haven't. The only bug I suppose I've come across, and I don't know whether this lies with Samsung or Google Assistant, but it's on the phone, and unless my contact phone number, let's say, Kyran, if I had your number in my phone and I didn't have the +353 and the 0 dropped in front of your phone number in my contacts, it would only bring it as far as the dial screen. But if I had you as an international +353 number, it will go the whole hog and ring you. Now, I don't know whether that's just on my Samsung or not, but it's one little bug I found about it. But after that, I have no complaints about the Google Assistant on the phone, and it's brilliant.
I'd love to go and dig a little bit deeper on Google Assistant, and maybe that's a future show, David and
JP
might be and team we could look at, and because I have obviously with the My NCBI Smart Hub, which I'm hoping all the listeners are using. There's certainly that's available. Well, it was available, excuse me, on Google up until recently until they shut down all the apps. But so I have a Google Assistant at home, and I have a Google Hub, I think it's called, at home, and then I have obviously the Android phone now, which people aren't getting back. It's mine now.
Fair enough.
I suppose where I found the Google Assistant first handy was you're out driving, and you have a call to make. The hands-free element of it, so you don't get your 5 penalty points and your €120 fine or whatever it is, which I've never got that. So
I was going to say, it sounds like you're speaking from experience there, Daniel. You knew that straight off the bat. Fair play.
It is from experience. Well, not the experience of the penalty points or anything like that, but it's just like, I suppose road safety is so important that a good, reliable phone, being able to speak to your phone and get to dial people is most important.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, Mairead actually has also been trying out the whole Android world, and she spoke a little bit about Google Assistant as well. Now, Mairead isn't actually here today because it's her birthday. Happy birthday, Mairead!
Happy birthday, Mairead.
But we did catch up with Mairead last week to get her kind of final thoughts on the Android side, and she spoke a little bit about Google Assistant and stuff as well. So here was Mairead's perspective on the whole Android switch. Mairead, you had been using the Android phone for a little while, and you had a relatively okay experience, but how has that experience evolved? You said it had improved a lot since the last time you tried it, but where are you at with it now?
Okay, I suppose, look, while it has improved a lot accessibility wise, I suppose for me, like, the preference would still be, I suppose, like, after spending like a couple of weeks using the phone, and I spent a few days using it as my own personal phone as well, just to see how I'd get on with it. So I did completely wipe the phone and reinstall everything from scratch, just to kind of set it up the way I would like it. Now, when I set it up the way I'd like it, I suppose I did customize it as much as I could during the installation process. So I only installed a couple of the Samsung apps on it, like some Samsung things I didn't install because I just wanted to use the Google Play Store and all that kind of thing. So anything that was kind of Google related, I kind of would prefer to use because it just does seem more polished and accessible. But look, on saying that, it has improved a lot. I mean, I've been using the TalkBack screen reader and the commentary screen reader, and to be fair, they're both kind of the same now. I think initially when the commentary screen reader came out a couple of years ago, it was to kind of substitute for TalkBack because TalkBack wasn't announcing a lot of things that, reading certain parts of the screen that commentary was reading, but now they're kind of both pretty much similar. So I do prefer the voice on the TalkBack rather than the one from the commentary. So I've kind of stuck with the TalkBack screen reader. Like, I suppose, again, for me now, overall, I suppose I do feel the iPhone is still more accessible and more polished for people who are totally blind. I do think maybe, okay, the Android phones are more accessible for maybe to a degree for people with some level of vision, because in the accessibility options, I kind of do feel they focus more on like the magnification and speak to select and all that kind of thing. They do support a lot of that, whereas, for me, it's mainly the screen reader support I would want. Again, I suppose, look, like for me, again, with the Samsung phone, as I kind of went to use it, I kind of found that I was kind of really missing out on more things that I just really wanted to go back to my iPhone. Like, really, the iMessage I completely missed, because it's just nice to have, everything sent as one message rather than multiple messages to people, and you have the complete conversation of messages that you send to people there.
So you missed the ecosystem, really?
Yeah, I really missed it. I really,
That's
now I know
interesting.
Android do have their own like Hangout one or whatever, but again, that only kind of works for people who are using, Androids. And again, I suppose, look, I just found, I've been using Apple products for years. I'm so heavily invested in Apple products. Again, sure, I do my park run every week. I couldn't really, I couldn't use the Apple Watch with the Android phone,
Yeah.
I really missed that. And it was only kind of as you start to use it as your personal phone, you realize kind of what you're missing, maybe. I really missed that. Even my AirPods, okay, yes, while I could connect them, the AirPods Pro, I could connect them to the Android phone. It was a more dumbed down version. God, you'd really notice the sound quality. It was really decreased.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, it was really decreased.
So you headed pretty much straight back to iPhone by the sounds of it.
Pretty much, yeah, because even like, even for notifications, I just feel, on the locked screen, if all I'd have to do is press the side button on the iPhone and you'd have a list of all your missed calls or whatever. You'd have all your notifications there. Whereas when I was reviewing that on the Samsung Z Flip 4, on the Android phone, it was just like there was loads more up on the notifications bar than what you needed. There was like Bluetooth, there was the Wi-Fi you were connected to, there was everything, and you could easily miss, you know, a missed call from somebody or whatever, because it just, you know, it just doesn't say, like, whereas the iPhone will tell you straight away when you press the side button, missed call from such and such person or whatever. I just kind of didn't have that, you know, experience with the Android
phone.
Now,
And
on the
yeah,
plus
go
side,
ahead.
though, I will say what I really did like about the Android was the Google Assistant. I did like that. Often I find with Siri, you have to repeat things multiple times, or, you know, you'll get the response like working on it, and it keeps going around the circle. Whereas
Yeah.
the Google Assistant was really, really responsive. So like if you wanted to make a phone call or anything that way, it was, you know, it was great. Or if you wanted it to read your messages, it was good that way. Even though I
So
was
is that
using,
something you'd kind of like to almost pull across if you could, like, and was that kind of the main thing that you did find, you know, this is actually better than iPhone?
I did find, yes, it was more like Google Assistant is definitely more responsive than Siri. Yes, and like even the responses you get, they're much more, you know, they're, you know, she'll have a basically a conversation with you, like, so it was
They're
more,
more articulated.
yeah, it was, I found the Google Assistant worked very well, like even for like, you know, getting the number for a restaurant or anything like that, or you know, it was like it would have it in seconds, whereas I kind of find when I do that with Siri, sometimes I'm just better off to go online because it'll get the number for me, and then like then it can't call it or something, so, or it stops working or it's working on it. So, you know, I just found there was a big difference there, and I suppose I'd love to see Siri improved more on the iPhone as well. That would be really great.
Was there anything else that you found that, you know, when you moved back to iPhone that you missed? Like, did it give you a perspective for, I guess, the ability to customize things more or anything like that? Or are you very satisfied at the same time with what the iPhone's offering you in that regard?
I'm actually very satisfied with the iPhone, really, because I suppose, as I say, I have a lot of Apple products. I'm heavily invested with them. I have my AirTags as well. I mean, you can't, you know, if the Apple AirTags, you can't use those with the Android phone. Okay, while I can use Tiles ones or whatever, I mean, the precision finding wouldn't be there on them. So that's kind of what I would rely on. I suppose, like, another thing I suppose that I did kind of find a bit confusing, not confusing, but I suppose a little bit off-putting maybe for people, especially if it was their first time moving to Android or whatever, is especially with a Samsung phone, you have the Samsung Galaxy Store and the Google Play Store if you want to download apps. I mean, first, like, okay, there obviously must be some differences in the app from each app store. Like Samsung would have their own version of it maybe, but like, you know, why have two Play stores? Because, you know, if people are just getting used to Android, or, you know, people might not be, you know, people might just say, oh, it's a Samsung phone, so I'll get everything from the Galaxy Store, Samsung Galaxy Store, and they may not be getting the best experience of an app, you know. So that, like, I think just one app store is plenty, you know, is all you need.
Fair enough.
You know,
overall, the experience then, good, bad? Do you ever see a point, you know, even down the road, what would have to happen for you to seriously consider a switch to Android?
it would probably be because, for whatever reason, I can't afford an iPhone or something, or to go into a contract or something. Like, also, like, I suppose one good thing that Android phones really do have going for them is price range. There's so much, you know, there's so many phones on the market for various price ranges, whereas all the iPhones are pretty expensive, I suppose. But really, I do think if you are going to go for an Android phone, my advice, if I was to ever go for one, I think would be to go for the stock Android one. Not a Huawei or a Samsung or any one of those, because I just think there's too many like with the Google one, you kind of have it straight out of the box, and you know what, it's the more polished version of Android, I would call it. You know, the stock
Okay.
Android ones is the more polished and to be more
Okay.
closer to the iPhone. But for me at the moment, I love my iPhone. I'm really happy with
Fair enough.
the Apple one. But like definitely what it really has done for me is it has really increased my knowledge for when, we'll say, service users come in and they're looking for support with their Android phone or whatever. Because I wouldn't have had a lot of experience with Android phones. So, it's given me a chance to have a play with the phone and, use every feature of it and just kind of, have a rough idea where the settings are when people come into the office. Because like every Samsung phone, every model of Samsung phone or any Android phone, the settings are in different places, so like if you wanted to turn up the screen brightness, it could be under display and settings in one Android phone and it could be somewhere else in another phone. So whereas I suppose that's at least the one good thing with the iPhone as well, it's consistent. Anyone that has an
Everything's the
iPhone,
same.
everything is the same, so you could easily troubleshoot a problem for somebody there and then over the phone. Like whereas an Android phone, you may have to spend a few minutes longer trying to figure out, okay, go try this option, go into this option. So there is that about it.
But you're sticking with iPhone for now.
Oh, I'm sticking with my iPhone, yeah.
Fair enough.
I haven't been won over.
Fair enough. Mairead, on that note, just very, very quickly before we wrap up, your first thoughts on the Apple Vision Pro headset?
Yes, my thoughts on them would be, I'm looking forward to them coming out. I'd love to be able to test them.
Okay, interesting. Do you see much potential? Obviously, we've discussed before, you don't have any vision. So do you see a use case for virtual reality for people with no vision?
Not as much, I don't think, but like, I suppose you need to experience it really and just play with it to see how it goes. It's something I kind of need to sit down with, really.
So you're open to it?
Yeah, I'd be
but
open
not
to it, like.
open to it, but not super enthusiastic just yet. You've got questions.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Mairead, thank you so much as always for joining me on Talking Technology.
Thank you. Thanks, David.
Kyran, do you have we've heard Mairead's thoughts there. Is there anything you'd like to add to that? I mean, it's a fascinating perspective to see the difference really between someone like yourself who has maybe not a lot, but certainly some level of usable vision versus someone who is in Mairead's position and the position of many others who doesn't have the same level of vision.
Yeah, and I think it kind of reiterates what I was saying earlier. It kind of comes down to now at the moment choosing the device that's right for you. I mean, certainly for me in my position, I don't think it's an accessibility decision. I think maybe for no vision it might be, but I also fundamentally it comes down to what is the best device for the best person, for the right person. Excuse me, best device for the right person. And I think one of the interesting things that we don't talk about enough in NCBI labs is that we have a huge amount of technology that's available for people to come in and experience. So in almost every location now around the country, there's an iPhone with a large screen, an iPad, there's an Android device, and the technology trainers that work throughout the country are available to help you decide on which one's the right for you. And it can be maybe it's just that you want to come in and try the iPhone and see see if it's a right fit, or is it you're thinking about changing to an Android phone. Do reach out to NCBI Labs. We're always here to help, and we don't do it for profit. We do it because it's something that it's important to us to make sure that someone with a vision impairment gets the right device as opposed to what we think is best for them. And it's got to be led by the person, making sure they're making the right decisions. So if you do want to experience an Android phone or an iPhone or see what they're like and see, and it's, I suppose my final thoughts on this experiment was, whatever device you prefer is the right device, so.
Absolutely. Daniel, you wanted to come in there as well?
Yeah, just I suppose to echo what Kyran said, getting the right device. We all kind of try to shy away from generalizations, and like I think Mairead kind of alluded to it a good bit there in her piece, that for somebody who's reliant on a screen reader, Android is, while it has come a long way, it's still not. It's still not as good as the Apple. But then you turn that on its head and you flip it with Kyran's experience, and he's saying there's certain features in Android for a low vision user that trumps the iPhone. So and that kind of dovetails nicely into Kyran's point, like these pieces of equipment, it's well worth giving them a little road test before jumping in and making the purchase, because especially some of the models of iPhone, like, they are expensive. If you buy something like that and you don't like it, it's an expensive paper holder, so the last thing you want to be doing is buying a piece of equipment that ends up in a drawer because you don't like it, or it's not it's not really user friendly to you. It could be user friendly to the next person. So
Sure.
It's definitely going to be on a case by case basis.
And it's also, I think, important to point out as well that these devices are always changing. We have tech news coming up in a while where our exciting new newsreader, who I won't reveal their identity just yet, but they'll be telling us a little bit about some of the new features that are coming in Android 14. So, like, these devices, they're never remaining still. So, as well as it being, what's best for you, it's also what's best at the time that you're getting it, because these things are never staying still.
And actually, I would add to that a little bit, by the way, because I've been a victim of this myself over the years, is never wait for the next update to make it perfect. But buy what will make the biggest difference to you now.
Yeah, that's fair.
I've hung on for years for a certain device, and you tend then to think that it's this silver bullet that will fix every single problem you ever had, and you get it and you're ultimately disappointed,
Yeah, I'm still crying over Matter in the smart home. It really has not been what I expected, but hey, one of these days.
Made no difference whatsoever.
Yeah, one of these days. So
I think it's fair to say, that both systems are going to have their flaws, and always will.
Yeah, that's fair.
While they do incrementally move towards like the user experience on smartphones versus 10 years ago, like, it's light years ahead. So what's going to be like in another 5 to 10 years, it's going to be light years ahead again. But as new stuff gets added to the capabilities of these phones, there's going to be things that get introduced. They don't work so well. It takes the Google engineers and the Apple engineers certain amount of fixes to get them out and get them fixed and move on, and then it's the next big thing. So it's just going to be constantly evolving, and you're going to be looking back and wondering, when do I dip my toe in the water?
Yeah, it's an interesting time ahead, and it's an interesting time now to see how far it's come. But Kyran, thank you so much for sharing the experience. I think it's a really valuable experience to hear about, because I think there's a lot of us, and you alluded to it there earlier on, that we have this kind of perception of like, iPhone forever, baby, let's go. But it's Android is a really very valid competitor to iPhone now, even on the accessibility front, and that's interesting to see.
I have to say, I didn't bring I was very lucky to go to the Apple HQ recently.
I was just going to ask you, did you bring your Android to Apple Park?
No, I didn't. I left my Oh,
It has to, like the airport security, you have to walk through it, I presume. And if there's an Android,
Android detected, hand over your Pixel.
No, I very much made sure my AirPods were in my ears. And no, I didn't. Sorry, I didn't bring my Android. But no, it was the place is spectacular. But you really only get into the visitor center, So, yeah, what an incredible.
You didn't meet Tim, so.
No, he had a meeting that day.
Okay.
He didn't answer. No, I didn't even email him. But
fair enough.
It was an opportunity. I was there for something else, and I was nearby, and I just said we'd swing by and see if we could get there. So we got there and it's beautiful. Like, I mean, just from a purely architectural standpoint, it's like there's no walls. It's just glass. From the visitor center, which is just an Apple store and a cafe, and then you can see like and I don't know if our listeners are familiar with what Apple Park is. It's effectively like a huge circular building that looks kind of like a spaceship, and it has 3 or 4 floors on all circular, and there's big greens in the center. But just off to the side of that was the Apple Visitor Center, which is where I was, and it's as I said, it's a store, and we bought. It's so silly, like we sat down and had a coffee, and when you get a latte, like there's an Apple logo in the milk of it, like, and then they sell little things like souvenirs that you can't get anywhere else. So myself and a couple someone we were with got some Apple T-shirts, which I will never wear in public, which are just really embarrassing, but they're really high quality T-shirts, I can tell you. So like just to see it, it was like, I mean, I remember I wrote a post on LinkedIn talking about it, and I think for me it was kind of just a cool thing. I do like architecture and design as a slightly on a personal level, but to see the headquarters of Apple and have been so bought into Apple accessibility and a follower of it, and just how they've embedded it into their full product design it was a really kind of a cool thing to me. And before I joined NCBI, and when I worked in commercial tech companies where I was CIO and other roles, using Apple computers, in my view, has enabled me to achieve so much. So it felt like a kind of a really cool thing to do. And it's very funny. I told my wife about it, and she literally just slagged me for about 15 minutes, calling me the biggest Apple fanboy in the world. But
well, I get it though.
She's probably right, but it was quite cool to be there. Almost impossible to get a cab away from it, but it was. And we did get shouted at by Apple security because we asked the taxi driver if he could drive near the gates to take a picture.
Oh, I love it.
And a security guard came out and was screaming at us, so we were like, "Go, go, go!"
Oh, Kyran got into trouble at Apple Park. I love that. I love it.
Yeah, I left that bit off the social media side of things.
Yeah, I didn't see that in the LinkedIn post. Yeah, it's that's amazing. It really is crazy to think like that only Apple could turn their offices into like an attraction like that. It's kind of amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it was either 1 billion or 2 billion it cost for their headquarters, but wow.
Yeah, wow. That's mental.
Yeah, like, it's so
yeah. So Kyran, before we move on to IA Labs, which has a slightly smaller office, I believe, than Apple, we will have you any kind of final thoughts on the Android side before we wrap this one up?
Just that I probably won't slag it as much as I did before going through this experience. So I think Daniel, and I really wish Sean could be here today, but he's unavailable. But I think I'll be a little bit less critical when the two guys tell me about how amazing Android is, and I look forward to hearing all the new feature updates that they release.
There you go.
How many years later, David, is it after taking us to get to this point?
Yeah, it's taken a while.
4 years. 4 years of punishment has just come to an end.
Yep. There you go. And just to confirm, I just Googled, Apple Park didn't cost 1 billion, didn't cost 2 billion. It cost 5 billion, baby. $5 billion. Yep.
Wow.
That's an expensive office.
That was an expensive latte as well, I can tell you.
Was it? Yeah. Pricey, I'd imagine. But there you go. So let's move on, I guess, from our Android and iPhone discussion. A really valuable conversation to have, but an equally valid conversation to have, and an exciting conversation to have, given the timing, is around IA Labs. And IA Labs has been very busy in recent times. They've recently launched a fascinating report into digital accessibility in Northern Ireland, and they've been winning awards. Kyran, do you want to just tell us about all of the crazy stuff that has been happening at IA Labs? Because since we last spoke, you've now been appointed the IA Labs CEO.
Very, very humbling as well to be offered that. So, and just for context of everyone listening, so Inclusion and Accessibility Labs, or IA Labs for short, is a company that just focuses on digital accessibility. And what it does is all day, every day, we review websites and mobile applications and products to make sure that they're digitally accessible to all people with disabilities, not just sight loss, although sight loss obviously is one of the harder ones to meet the standard in. And it launched in 2022, in April of 2022, and Minister Anne Rabbitte helped us launch the company. And it's been growing and growing and growing in terms of popularity and success, and primarily all it does is promote digital equality. And what I find is that, as someone with sight loss, and I think, David, you might concur with this, is that there's so many times when you interact with a digital world and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And you can't order something online, or you can't use a taxi app, or you can't, use a transport app, or you can't do this. And it's just not good enough that the world is not digitally equal and inclusive to everyone, because fundamentally the World Wide Web was built to be a unifier, a great unifier. And, as I've spoken to a lot of technologists are thinking about generative AI and all sorts of amazing, innovations. And sometimes I say, guys, you just have to add an area label and you will make things a hell of a lot better for so many different people. So that's what IA Labs does. Is it does digital accessibility all day, every day, and we have 9 people working on that exclusively. That's what they're all experts in their field, and it's been an incredible ride. Building a company, and we're heavily supported by NCBI. It's a fully owned subsidiary of NCBI, but it just has that exclusive focus on digital accessibility. Excuse me.
So on that note, then you recently released a report commissioned by Foresight Northern Ireland to look into digital accessibility in Northern Ireland. What were the key outcomes of that?
So the first thing I would say is I don't want anything I say in the next few minutes to be considered finger pointing, okay? Because everyone is on a journey with digital accessibility, so and I think it's important. The first thing, what I want people, who are listening today, who are most likely people with sight loss or their families and friends, is to hear the message and saying that, this report represents a line in the sand, and we've done numerous of these reports based in Ireland, although this is the first one we've looked at for outside of Northern Ireland, outside of the Republic. So we looked at Northern Ireland as well. And what I really want the takeaway to be is that a few things. One is that if you're using a website day to day and it's broken, we need to be letting people know that you're being excluded, and that can be through the NCBI advocacy team, or you can let the website know themselves. And so many websites don't even have an accessibility statement, and it's just not good enough in this day and age. So, and I recognize that some websites need to go on a journey, and IA Labs is here to help on that journey. And we want to, teach as many people how to meet the standards. So the first thing to say about the report is that we review against what's called the WCAG standard. That's called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines Standard. And we, we review against what's called version 2.1. 2.1 is the standard that's embedded in Irish law, Irish regulations, to say that all government and publicly funded entities must have a digitally accessible website, and they don't. Not all of them, some of them do. But it's on the lower percentage side. And what we saw when we looked at Northern Ireland, we're actually seeing that, from a government perspective, things are slightly ahead, because their regulation has actually been in place longer than the one across the EU. So the one in Ireland came in place in 2020, and the one in the UK has been in place for many years before that. So, most government sites in Northern Ireland do actually have a digitally accessible website. But when you look outside of that, there's quite a number of institutions that don't. Like if you look at Northern Ireland's top employers, almost none of them have a digitally accessible website. So, these are people that are employing huge amounts of people in a market where it's hard to find people. And I think, people with disabilities should be offered the same opportunities as anyone else, because, we can do the same jobs. And, not being able to apply for a job is such a barrier, and it's the same across, schools and housing executives, and even we looked at the likes of Northern Ireland Water, electricity suppliers, and none of them really had a digitally accessible website. So what I would say is that, Northern Ireland is very similar to the Republic in that it has a lot of work to do in getting themselves ready, getting their existing websites ready to be digitally accessible. And I think, really, it sometimes actually, it annoys me significantly, because up to 25%. So if you look at the World Health Organization, the World Health Organization says 1.3 billion people in the world have a disability. Okay, but what we've seen more and more is that if you look from an assistive support point of view, so anyone that interacts with a website, it's actually even smaller. It's even greater. Excuse me. So we think that it's about 1 in 4 people, based on the research that iLabs have done and many other companies have done, need some level of assistive support as they interact with the World Wide Web. And that could be, a temporary disability because they've had an accident or something like that, or it could be, as people grow older, they need different levels of assistive support. So to effectively exclude 25% of the people that are interacting with your website is just not good enough. And I think what we need to start doing is saying that out loud, and like through organizations like NCBI, we have an advocacy team, will reach out, but letting those organizations know as well. And I think one thing which is something we need to be really clear on this is that if you're in a position where you're using a website and you want to complain, make sure it's flagged as an accessibility issue. And it's not a customer complaint, it's an accessibility issue. And we're here to help in iLabs to help fix it, because it is, there's some complexity to fixing it. But what I wanted to say, and if you don't mind me just saying one more point, David, is that what's the most important thing about iLabs is we want to listen to people with disabilities and use that feedback to build a good user experience for anyone that interacts with iLabs.
Yeah, it's a fascinating area, because I think oftentimes, and I speak here as someone, who's visually impaired myself, I use VoiceOver almost exclusively as I browse the web, but I'd often find, that accessibility or inaccessibility is very rarely anything to do with malice. It's just ignorance, because people aren't aware of it. They're not aware of the fact that, yes, blind people actually do use computers, that sometimes isn't talked about, or, people don't even consider that. Developers don't consider that. That's not necessarily, something that's, wrong, but it's something we can do better. We can make people aware of it. It's as much about education as anything else, I think. And IA Labs, I think, has done a great job in that, and reports like this, they have great value because they say to these employers and institutions and organizations that, hey, you know, there are people with disabilities also using your products, and there's little things you can do to make that a better experience. And oftentimes those companies will do that. You know, it just needs to be said.
For some reason, what we find is that in so many cases, it seems to be acceptable to not make a website digitally accessible. But
strange, isn't it?
And I don't know why that has become the case, because I have worked with probably close to 200 or 300 developers over my career. And in projects that I've worked on, I would always say, it's not ready until it's accessible. So if and it doesn't matter if it's a web page, a mobile app or whatever, like it's not ready until, and I've never met one developer that said, no, I don't want to do that. So I think, you know, it's not based on appetite. I think you're right. It's people aren't aware that they should be doing this, and it's like no one would not put a ramp in front of a building, you know. But at the same time, people with disabilities are excluded from the digital world, and that's just not good enough. And what we want to do in iLabs is we have a singular mission. We want to make the world digitally equal to everyone, and what we're doing is we have a number of ways to do that. I know you want to talk about the Dublin Tech Summit, but you know, from iLabs' point of view, all we want to do is make every website in the world digitally accessible. And notice I said the world, not Ireland, because it is technology is the great enabler. It is the great leveler. It is the thing that makes all of our lives so much better. But there's areas of technology that are just exclusive, and it shouldn't be that case. They should be inclusive. So, you know, we can, as people with disabilities, advocate for it and say it's not good enough that I can't, you know, read a size chart online, or know what my friends tagged me in Facebook, or you know, I'm unable to book a flight, or I can't use an app to move from A to B. Life is hard enough as it is.
Would you like meal A, B, C, or D when you're ordering your food? You know, it's like, yes. I don't know what those are.
Or just we actually did a review. It's only happened about 3 times, and we did a review recently of one website, and it was so bad, we actually just couldn't even produce a report. You know, when the screen reader came into focus, there was 15,000 links.
Whoa.
So if you're, so we were trying to explain this to people, and they all were labeled as "click here." You know, like, okay, yeah, that's very helpful.
Which one?
No, so you know, and you know, you look at that site visually, and it's very appealing, but it's completely inaccessible. And I think we need to start standing up and letting website owners know, letting, you know, advocacy teams in the likes of NCBI know that, you know, you're having issues, and we'll advocate for that on your behalf.
And before we talk about Dublin Tech Summit, just very quickly, what does the future, you know, look like for, you know, reporting these kind of things? You know, like, what's the easiest way if someone comes across an inaccessible website? What can they do to report it now?
Well, the future really is, in my view, is there is the European Accessibility Act, which is coming in 2025. And in fact, that act is in many EU states, or EU member states, is already a law. And what that actually states is that by 2025, not starting in 2025, so by June 2025, all websites must be digitally accessible. Now, there is some, I don't want to go into the minutiae of the detail of what the exceptions are, but for the most case, all websites and products and services in the EU need to be digitally accessible. And if you really want to get into the detail, I highly recommend doing a Google search on Mason, Hayes and Kern, who are a leading Irish solicitor firm on digital accessibility, and they have some wonderful articles explaining all the ins and outs of it. So it's probably too big a topic for today, but I think the key thing is by 2025, everyone will have to do it. Now, what I actually think is more important is that you will be in a position to be able to litigate. And by litigate, I mean, sue the company if they're not digitally accessible. So the means of advocacy and the means of reporting issues is going to become a lot more robust because websites are just not compliant at the level that they should be. So obviously the last resort really here is, and I don't want to tell everyone that's listening today that they should be, going out seeking legal advice, but obviously you should inform the company themselves first and make it clear that it's a digital accessibility issue. And if they don't have an accessibility page, you need to tell them that they need, and that can be done through many support channels. And if you're hitting a kind of a wall on some of your interactions with a specific company or organization or whatever, let the likes of NCBI know, and we'll raise it on your behalf to our advocacy team.
Brilliant, Kyran. That's a brilliant area. Good to be aware of, and it's good to be aware of everything that IA Labs do, because this sort of stuff does have value, because it is, we often say the single greatest enabler for people with sight loss, and that is a very true thing to say. It can make a massive impact. And it seems in the last year that IA Labs has already been having a major impact, because I've been told that you were having quite a bit of success at the Dublin Tech Summit.
Yeah, so we presented at the Dublin Tech Summit this year. We had a booth in their startup area, and the full team from IA Labs were there, and the interest I have to say from most companies was incredible. So many people came up wanting to know more about digital accessibility, how they can get involved, what they can do. So that was really, really, really incredible. But also, we were shortlisted to pitch in what's called the Ignite Pitch Competition, which is startups from all over Ireland and across Europe pitch in this competition to see who is the best startup at the summit. And amazingly, IA Labs were the winner of that. So we won the pitch competition at the Dublin Tech Summit. I am so proud of the company and what we achieved. And I think what's really important to take away from that is that people are starting to listen about digital accessibility, and they're starting to understand how important it is. But what we pitched for is IA Labs, there's in the digital accessibility world, everyone has so many opinions on the standard and so many, and that's okay, that's fine, that's okay. But what IA Labs really want to do is we really want to listen to people with disabilities and allow them a mechanism to say, this is how I use the world, or use the digital world as someone with a disability. So part of our pitch at that competition was saying that we have come up with a solution, a technical based solution. It's called a software as a service solution in IA Labs. And what it will allow people to do is report on the issues that they experience day to day in using the web. And it'll be available for free. And it'll be available free to people with disabilities or their families and friends. And effectively, it will allow you then to report issues. Now, it's not built yet. We're looking for some additional funding in IA Labs to build it. But effectively, what we want to do is, for the first time ever, get real life feedback from people with disabilities about how they use the World Wide Web. And then we will use that analytics to explain not only the standard for digital accessibility, but what is a good user experience for people with disabilities using the digital world. And that's what we were there for the Dublin Tech Summit was. And we beat companies from Japan, Malta, Greece, I think there was Italy was there, and numerous ones from Ireland. And digital accessibility came out on top with numerous judges. So I'm so thrilled for the entire team in IA Labs. They're doing an incredible job working and focusing on digital accessibility.
It's something to be really proud of, isn't it?
Yeah, I am actually really proud of. I'm really proud of the team, and I'm really proud of the. Over 200 people now are working with IA Labs, 200 commercial companies, all focused on making their websites better. And if you go to ialabs.ie, and you can see a list of all those, and every one of those is committed to digital accessibility, and that number is growing each and every single month. So it's one of those things, is that if we can build this tool we will make the world digitally equal. And that's the goal that we live by in iLabs.
And it's well worth pointing out as well, because as you said earlier on, a lot of people who listen to this podcast may be blind or visually impaired, that there is some brilliant content as well if you're interested on the IA blog, which you can find on ialabs.ie. And there's some fascinating content there. If digital accessibility is an area that you're interested in, it really is a great blog to check out. I find it really fascinating to read when I see those posts pop up on LinkedIn all the time. It's really brilliant. So Kyran, thank you so much for telling us about IA Labs. And will we do something new, Kyran? Do you fancy doing something new?
Sure, go for it.
All right, let's do something new. We have got, we teased poor Mr. Daniel Dunn in our podcast planning meeting this morning because we want a talking technology newsreader. And we weren't going to get Anne Doyle, trust us, we tried. But we had to find someone who could do just as good a job, just as strong a newsreader. We needed someone with a magical voice. A magical voice. And Kyran, I think we found that person. And that person is Mr. Daniel Dunn. Daniel, are you ready to read tech news? We'll have a jingle for this hopefully soon. But are you ready to do it?
Yes, thanks.
All right, Daniel,
thanks,
it's
David.
over to you.
Thanks very much. Okay, so first up today, well, things are looking up for fans of the Microsoft Soundscape. With a month to go and until the old app officially shuts off its servers, we're slowly starting to see alternatives pop up. AppleViz are reporting on an app called OpenScape, which takes much of the former Soundscape app and replicates it, while NCBI's Possibility Lab are involved in a consortium developing what they call Soundscape for All. So for everybody out there who's fallen in love with the Microsoft Soundscape, a little bit of good news coming across the horizon. So it's a little unclear at this point, though, must be said, what's next for the Soundscape users. But with the clock ticking down until the 30th of June, when it's going to shut off, we'll be hoping that one of these viable alternatives hits the App Store soon. So as mentioned earlier, David, the Android is getting a new 200% zoom option for font sizes. The new big font sizes might not work in every app, as not all apps will be optimized for such large text. But the big text is still a very welcome addition to the operating system. So this is coming to Android 14, which is due out, I presume, August, September, October, somewhere around there. Android also will be adding the ability to adjust the font size from the notification shade. So that's where you can pull down from the top of the screen, quickly adjust the text on screen with a touch, making it easier to do all that on the go. So they're in what we call beta mode or in testing mode, and it's expected to be rolled out with the release of Android 14 later this year. Now, a little caveat on the rollout of Android. Just because it's going to be launched in very late summer, early autumn, does not mean that every Android phone gets it, because it's down to the manufacturer of your phone to implement it. But the Google Pixel owners will get it first, because obviously it's Google's flagship phone. So the likes of Samsung's, HTC's, and all the other brands that are out there may have to wait a little bit longer for that one. And finally, for now, much of Reddit, including the r/blind subreddit, have gone dark today in protest over changes to the company's API. So Reddit plans to start charging for the use of the API, but many developers have said the costs are too prohibitive and are forcing them to shut down their apps. So these apps are kind of third-party apps which integrate into Reddit. The creator of Apollo, which is a popular Reddit client for Apple iOS, has announced it's closing at the end of the month, as the developer estimates it will cost them in the region of 20 million euros a year to keep that little app alive. So Reddit have reportedly made an exception for accessibility tools using the API, but thousands of subs, including the R-blind, have still opted to go dark in protest. The protest is also impacting other subs like Reddit Funny, Reddit Music, and impacting tens of millions of users. So that's all your tech news from me. But for now, it's back to you, David.
Thank you, Daniel. There's definitely a newsreader in you there. I'm sure. Yeah. How did that feel being Anne Doyle there? Did you enjoy it?
I missed my calling for the 6-1 there, I think.
Oh, yeah. Well, what's her name has gone to the BBC, so maybe you'll have to join. Katrina Perry's gone, so maybe Daniel Dunn will be replacing her on the 6-1 news. We'll have to wait and see. So that is it for this week's Talking Technology. We're back same time, same place in 2 weeks' time. But if you do need technology support in the meantime, you can, as always, email labs@ncbi.ie or give us a call. 1-800-911-110 is the number that you need. 1-800-911-110. So that is it. Thanks to Kyran, to David, to Mairead, to Daniel, to JP, to every single person who worked behind the scenes and on the show today. Thank you all. And we'll be back in 2 weeks' time. For now, thanks for listening. Enjoy the weather, and we'll see you soon. Bye now.
Thanks for listening to the Talking Technology podcast with NCBI Labs. If you would like to support our show, you can visit donate.ncbi.ie. The NCBI Labs Talking Technology podcast is proudly sponsored by IA Labs, the market leader in the provision of digital accessibility services.